Thank you for joining us today on Earthfile. Welcome to the program. I'm Ayola Kasim. The 22nd Conference of Parties of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change ended on the 19th of November in Marrakech. The expectations from this COP ran very high, perhaps for two reasons. The Paris Agreement has come into force with supersonic speed just after 11 months of its adoption in Paris. So there was euphoria of implementing it in earnest. Second, there was a felt need to show strong solidarity and determination among the 195 parties. Well, today on the program, we bring to you how the conference wrapped, as well as a look at how Morocco is riding towards being green. Do stay with us. The 22nd Annual Conference of Parties to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, held at Marrakech, concluded with the release of the Marrakech Action Proclamation, which celebrates the unstoppable global momentum on climate change and sustainable development action. The two-week meeting included COP22, the 12th session of the Conference of the Parties serving as the meeting of the parties to the Kyoto Protocol, and the fourth session of the Conference of the Parties serving as the meeting of the parties to the Paris Agreement. Three subsidiary bodies also met, the 45th sessions of the Subsidiary Body for Scientific and Technological Advice and Subsidiary Body for Implementation, and the second part of the first session of the Ad hoc Working Group on the Paris Agreement. Parties adopted 35 decisions, 25 under the COP, 8 under the CMP, and 2 under the CMA. The conference was scheduled to end at 6 p.m. on the 18th of November. However, it did not end until almost 3 a.m. on Saturday, 19th of November. Negotiations on Friday focused on the draft copy decision on entry into force of the Paris Agreement and on the draft of the first session of the Conference of the Parties, serving as the meeting of the parties to the Paris Agreement. The Friday negotiations were the culmination of informal consultations carried out by the COP president throughout the meeting. The discussions focused on where to house orphan issues, the timing of the next or resumed conference of the parties in 2017 or 2018, and whether the adaptation fund should serve the Paris Agreement. Pertinently, the Paris Agreement, adopted amidst much fanfare in 2015, has put the world on a new track to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, with a view to keep the rise in temperature well below 2 degrees Celsius and possibly below 1.5 degrees Celsius. The agreement has entered into force on the 4th of November, a month after meeting the twin threshold of at least 55 countries emitting 55% of global greenhouse gas emissions.
We have much to gain by acting now. I strongly urge all countries to increase the level of ambition in their national climate plans over the next 2 years. I also call on other sectors of society to accelerate their climate efforts. Cities, citizens, and CEOs were crucial to mobilizing political support for the Paris Agreement. They are also among the most visionary and ambitious actors building low-carbon, resilient economies that will prosper in a climate-changed world.
A multitude of issues were discussed at closed-door formal negotiations and informal consultations between countries. Many side events involving all stakeholders took place on themes such as gender, resilience, civil society, indigenous people, youth, oceans, public health, agriculture, renewables, cities, and their interplay with the planet's changing climate. Businesses, investors, cities, and local governments undertook fresh voluntary commitments, building on those made at Paris in 2015. The Nationally Determined Contribution Partnership, a coalition of many countries, non-state actors, and international institutions committed to ambitious nationally determined contribution implementation, was created.
Why this Marrakech Global Action Agenda was created is to decrease the gap of CO2 emission, which still is remaining until now, 40 to 17 gigaton. We have amazing announcement from all the non-state actors concerning the diminution of this gap of CO2 emission. We launched the NDC partnership, and NDC partnership is a medium term, and it's between 2020 and 2030 to have the implementation of the indices. But most important, end of this the Marrakech Global Action Agenda, we launched yesterday the long-term strategies, and this is very important for the investors. If you want the non-state actors and the private sector to trust the countries and the government, they need to have visibility, certainty, they need to have the trajectory, and this is why we are speaking about the long-term strategies. This is very important to implement now, but we need to know what is the goal and what is the trajectory.
The early few days of the conference were also shadowed by Donald Trump's win in the American presidential elections and the future role of America in the international climate regime.
We have seen many such campaign rhetorics not only in the United States, in many parts of the world. He may have to understand the reality of the whole world's programs, including particularly on climate change. I'm sure that he will make a good and wise decision.